Hello, good afternoon. This is Jim Whitehead, All Power Group. I want to thank you very much for being here. And, we're trying to get used to this lot going live. Luckily, I'm not dead. But bottom line, I got to admit, it's a little bit of challenge since it's like with anything, you have to get used to doing different things. Anyway, let's the topic, and this is going to be short. The topic is, and the good news is, I do all of what I'm going to tell you. I've done what I'm going to tell you. Okay, I'm 74 years old, and for 20 years, I have been a backup generator company. I still am. So for all the years, starting after Wilma in 2005, Hurricane Wilma, I started a generator company. And for 20 years, I installed Generac. I was a Generac dealer, and actually still am. And what you're looking at is what we call the air-cooled product. And they have the liquid-cooled. They go up to much larger generators. The biggest market that Generac has is the air-cooled that you're looking at. What air-cooled mean? It just doesn't have a radiator, and it pulls a heck of a lot of air from the outside. I will be the first to admit, I was not comfortable years ago with air-cooled generators in Florida. But they pull so much air through that really it is really a non-issue. So you're looking at, let's say, a 26 kW. That means it's putting out 26,000 watts of power and about 100 amps. So you've got to, when we install a generator, your power needs have to fall within what this generator is capable of. Now, somebody'd say, why don't you just put a generator in that's 100 kW? Well, it's more expensive. So that's where you get into. So talking about this unit, on the left is a typical Generac transfer switch, typically 200 amps. And what that does is it interfaces the generator in your power panels. So what happens, we set up the transfer switch to hook up to your loads in your generator power panel. And when you lose power from the grid, the generator says, oh, okay, I got to start up. Once it gets up to its correct power and hertz, the transfer switch that's on the left will flip and switch you from, in essence, the dead grid tie to your generator. And the generator will do its best, and it will run, to supply power to what is set up for it to run on. Now, the biggest thing with generators is what you're looking at. In this case, if this is the generator that's installed, that's the total power you're going to have. And you can't say, hey, I'm going to add, this and that. Also, what we run into when we've done this, and let's say 2 years later, the customer says, hey, Jim, got a question. I want to add a new bedroom, my office, my this, my that. And since we sized the appropriateness of this particular generator, you can't just add additional power needs, because this is it. And when I kind of get to the end of the discussion, you'll see what is now a much better choice. The other thing with the installation of this home standby, you've got to have a gas source. On these small units, it's not diesel. It's either natural gas And by the way, only approximately maybe one of my customers out of 20 would actually have natural gas to their property. Some have it where it comes down the street and they can pay to have it connected. If you tell the gas company that you're going to be running a bunch of stuff, they might even install it from the street to your home with a meter for free. You know how that goes. And just as an aside, the reason they don't just say, oh, cool. If you say you're only going to run a generator and you need the natural gas for your generator, they're not going to like that. Because believe it or not, generators only run, in fact, the unit you looked at, they only run 5 minutes once a week to exercise. Literally uses almost no fuel at all. The only time you really have it where the bill would go up on gas is if we get a power loss that goes into multiple days, multiple hours. This choice that you're looking at is propane, and that's most of my installations over the years. And what you're looking at on the left is, it looks like 1,000-gallon propane tank, which only holds 800 gallons due to gas expansion. It goes in as a liquid, but some of it has to be a gas or turned into a gas. If you remember your science classes, when it gets warmer, things molecule-wise separate. So you end up having gas at the top of the tank, which is what is coming out to run your generator. The middle choice is what we call a 120. That holds 100 gallons of propane. And if you only have one of these, burning 2 to 3 hours, gallons an hour, you're not going to have a lot of run time. And what I found after hurricanes, the propane companies are terrible. They don't answer their phone because they're getting calls beyond reasonable, or they end up transferring to some other location, and you're calling and saying, I'm going to run out of gas. I need an emergency refill. And they'll say, well, I'm sorry, you're talking to somebody in Cincinnati, and you kind of, I can't make any emergency deliveries or get it scheduled for you. The tank on the right looks like it's a 500-gallon tank. By the way, the middle tank is above ground. They're made differently, and again, with generator installations and gas, and I'm a gas contractor. I was a gas contractor. You got to follow code, and more code. Now the tank on the left, tank on the right, those are buried, and again, they're made for that. And it's mainly because they have such a higher quantity of gas that you wouldn't want to have that sitting in your side yard in a reasonable populated area. The tank in the middle, if it's allowed, depending on the town and city, they typically will only allow you to have up to 499 gallons above ground. And we would a lot of times install 4 of these, and they all get daisy chained, and they're anchored so they don't blow away. Now the below ground tanks, all you see is the fill cap area, so not a big deal. But the issue is, and why you'd say, well, why don't you just install generators? It's a lot more expensive to what I'm going to come down to when I end this presentation. As I mentioned earlier, a generator will burn under load about 3 gallons an hour. Now, the gas installation, without any exaggeration, and I'll never tell you in anything I say on my content creation YouTube, I will never tell you something that's wrong or I know is wrong. Bottom line, you it adds about at least $10,000 to the job. So the tank's a whole separate issue, and again, you could be at $10,000 on the job, added to the job. Now, so what happens with, you gotta have the generator, you gotta have a slab, somebody's installing it, you gotta buy the generator, and an electrician, you know, and I would be the gas guy and my electrician would be the electrical guy. We have to pull an electrical permit and what they call plumbing, but it's gas. And you're looking at $20,000, $25,000, and they don't run very much. Yes, you'd be very happy, peace of mind, if you lose power for any period of time and it's 98 degrees. But it's expensive and they don't run very much. Now, what is the better choice now? It's people say to me, Jim, you've been selling generators for 20 years. I said, well, I've got a much better choice now, and I'm using it for myself. And that is, and I don't like to call or use this term, but they call them solar generators. But what they're made up of, and on the right-hand side, that's this particular Ultra, EcoFlow Ultra. On the left, that's the transfer switch is on the right, and that integrates just like the transfer switch we would do on the home standby, but in this case, it would be next to your panel in your garage, and the Ultra system, which is made up of an inverter. Now, what inverters do, you won't be tested on this, by the way. What an inverter does is it takes DC power, which comes from batteries or solar or wind. You know, they even saying now there are so many good wind choices, you know, a little spinning windmill in your yard and or more, and you basically, that's generating DC power. It goes into the battery systems because that holds DC power. And then the inverter said, oh, okay, you need power. So I'm going to, you know, give you what you need, but I'm going to convert it or invert it to AC power of what you're used to having all the time. Now, let me show you what I did. I'm in a new building. When I moved over here from Davie about 10 months ago, we knew that our home was too small for a YouTube studio, yada, yada, yada. So I decided, instead of pulling electrical from the home generally, I, in essence, said, I'm going to use one of these solar generators. And this is my third one. And you'd say, what, 3? I said, well, believe it or not, you have, and this is why I don't sell anything that I don't use myself, because you can learn about them, but unless you use them, you really don't know that much about them. You know, and a lot of times, you know, when you're talking to a salesperson, when they've been taught what to say, but they really don't understand what they're saying. So what we have is, and this is the proof of the punch, you can see almost in the lower left, that's the EcoFlow system, the inverter on the top. And in this case, I've got 3 batteries that are interfaced. And they basically pigtail into each other. And if you look up, you can see what we call, in this case, a manual transfer switch. And it's only because this building only needed 4 or 5 circuits. So I didn't really need or want an automatic switch. What basically happens here, I'm running everything you see, all the lights, camera, action, is coming off grid from that battery system. It goes into the auto or the manual transfer switch, and it supplies the power that I need. So what I might do, just so you understand, this is totally off grid, and there's a lot of homes up in the middle of Idaho that are off grid that don't have any utility power. Because most of the time, if they let's say live 3, 4, 5 miles from the closest utility source, they'd say, well, it's going to cost you $10,000 to put in an electrical line coming to the home. So a lot of people just choose, especially as things have gotten so much better in the choices to be off grid, and you're seeing one here. So this is a good system. Now, the thing I said earlier about the standby is that you only have, let's say when I was telling about the 26 kW standby, that's all the power you're going to get at any one time. But if I bought this with 2 batteries, and it's like with this building, it's using more power than I ever could plan. I just didn't know. I've never done a building like this. It's 28 feet by 14 feet, and you think, doesn't use much power. With all the lights and the cameras and the computers, it uses more than you think. So I bought this with 2 batteries, and about a month and a half ago, I said, it's getting warmer, the AC's working harder, and I'm using more power. So I just added another 6 kilowatt hour battery module. So now I have 18 kilowatt hours. The other nice thing, that isn't like where, oh boy, if those 3, I'm running out of power, I can add, in this particular setup, I can add another 2 6 kilowatt hour battery modules. So I would have 5, and they all stack up. If you had a big home and you're like, can we do this same setup with a large home? And they're all these companies that are making these units. This is EcoFlow. I've had an Anchor system. I had a smaller EcoFlow system. There's Bluetti. There's others that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head. But they have it where if I needed to, I could add obviously the 2 additional batteries on this setup, but I can add an additional 2 inverters and 5 battery modules. So you add them all together, you're up to 90 kilowatt hours. So you'd have a lot of running time. And by the way, these can, and we do, bring in solar. And so what happens is when you're running during the day, and the sun's out, some of the power that's being used is at the same time being replaced with what we call DC power. DC power is what comes out of batteries. Also DC power comes from solar panels. And, even the wind turbines are DC power. But what an inverter or a converter, it converts power from DC to AC. And that's the way it comes out of the unit. As it goes into the unit as DC, it comes out as AC, goes into the transfer switch, and here I am talking to you. Anyway, I love questions. I've enjoyed so much being in the generator business, and I'm very happy that we have other choices. And this isn't well known at this point because generally the smaller battery systems like Janky, they're good for, you go camping, you need some extra power. But to have it where now, and as I said earlier, these companies keep leapfrogging each other with building systems that have more capability. I just watched last night a discussion on the Anchor Solix 1, which, as stated, and this can do 90 kilowatt hours, what you're looking at by adding more, but the Solix can go up to 180 kilowatt hours. So the future is good. Solar panels are getting more efficient and able to put out more wattage. So I want to thank you, and I really, really appreciate you being here. And that's about it. And please, I want to answer questions. That's what I'm here for. Keeps my brain working. Thank you. Again, Jim Whitehead, All Power Group, Jamie Whitehead, Shih Tzu, my boss and CEO. So thank you, thank you, thank you.